Welcome to part 21 of my 3D modeling series. In this video I want to give you guys another example of using smoothing groups. So here's just a regular box. I'm going to go ahead and select this face, select inverse and delete, and I'm going to go ahead and start building up my shape. In this case I'm going to try to build like a piece of armor. So when you're using symmetry, it depends on which side you're symmetrifying. So since I'm working on the left side, I'm going to go ahead and apply symmetry, but by default it will try to symmetrify it from right to left. So I have to click on flip, and that will work this way. If I was working on the right side, then I would have to undo the flip and just have it be regular x-axis. So it depends. Sometimes you'll feel more comfortable working on the right side. Sometimes you'll feel more comfortable on the left side. So it all depends on what you feel more comfortable with. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the left side this time. So whenever you see your modifiers clogging up the place, you can go to right click and collapse to collapse to that. So I'm going to work on the left side this time. I'm just going to drag out some edges while also moving the back a little bit because I want it to be a little bit curved. This is like a piece of chest armor. Just holding shift and dragging out, and I can also use the rotate tool to kind of align my topology better. Okay, symmetry, turbo smooth, and then I'm going to go ahead and select both turbo smooth and symmetry, right click and copy, so I can quickly apply those modifiers without applying them each and every time. So I can put an edit poly on top of turbo smooth, delete the right side, and then just quickly paste those two modifiers right back there. So now I can right click on the edit poly modifier and collapse to. And now I'm going to go ahead and I've established my curvature. The point of doing that, of adding symmetry and turbo smooth and then putting an edit poly modifier on top of that, is to establish my curvature and give me more geometry to work with. So I want there to be like a cut here, so I'm going to do that, and then delete this, and now fix up my topology. In this case, for example, there are two vertices here. There doesn't need to be two here, so I'm going to merge that, and I'm going to go ahead and just clean it up and make it more even. So in this case, if I use remove, it's going to remove that. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on remove without holding control. And now I'm going to remove this vertex. So in those kind of situations, when you have an edge right here, if you do the remove operation and remove the edge, the vertices, you will end up removing that. And in that situation, you're better off just pressing control without just pressing remove without holding control or using this special hotkey. Okay, and right now I've got an end gone here, so I'm going to fix it up by cutting right here. And then I'm going to use the move tool with the constraint to edge to move it to the right a little bit. Because the reason is because I want there to be a curve here. And in this situation, there's not a in these edges, there's not a curve. This is straight. To maintain the curve, I'm going to have to move it out a little bit and just use the constraint tool. So this is a good example of what I'm talking about when I was talking about the constraint tool. In this example, we have quads here, but these quads are not optimum. These quads are much thinner than they should be. So to balance that out, I'm going to activate constraint to edge or face, and I'm going to move them out to make them a lot more even. So there's an example of fixing up my topology and continuing working. So you want to clean up your topology. So even though I'm using smoothing groups, I'm still maintaining that good topology, because good topology will help you model no matter what technique you use. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and one more thing, when you're doing that trick where you're establishing curvature, you want to do that on top of turbo smooth and symmetry. You might think, well, can't I just apply turbo smooth and then put edit poly on top of that? You don't want to do that, because the subdivision of this model depends on the opposite side as well. If you Okay, so I'll give you a good example of what I'm talking about here. If I create a box, for example, this is a pretty important concept. This is a mistake that a lot of beginners make, so I definitely want to make sure you don't make it. Okay, so I've just got 3 polygons here, 1, 2, and 3. If I apply turbo smooth right now, so what I've just done right now is I've established a curvature. But remember, and I'm going to also add one more edge here in the middle. So I've established my curvature, but remember that the curvature of this model depends on both sides. Right? I'm going to go ahead and delete the right side, and if I turbo smooth now, I'm going to go ahead and apply symmetry. So without the other side, the turbo smooth, the subdivision, won't give me the result that I want. So you can see the model changes drastically, not drastically, but enough when I turn off the turbo smooth. So if I want to establish curvature, I have to make sure both symmetry and turbo smooth are enabled and put the edit poly modifier on top of both of those. I'll make another clone right here. If I put the turbo smooth here and then put edit poly on here, and clean up my model, for example, remove the edges that I don't need. If I then put a symmetry on top of that, it's going to give me the result that I don't want, because sometimes the subdivision and the final result depends on both sides of the model. So you want to make sure that the edit poly goes on top of both symmetry and turbo smooth to establish your curvature. So that's why I'm doing that in this case. So now I have turbo smoothed it. I'm going to go ahead and apply a shell modifier. Give it an outer amount of about 5. Maybe even a little bit bigger. Okay. Edit poly. Once again, delete the right side. So when you apply a shell modifier, it automatically gives you smoothing groups between these 2 edges. So if I'm going to go ahead and collapse 2, simplify it. Okay. So now I've gone and added symmetry and turbo smooth, and now I'm going to activate smoothing groups. So now you can see it's giving me that sharp edge here. And now I can begin to add more detail. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select these edges here and move them to the left a little bit, because I want there to be a slight gap here. And then I'm going to select all these edges, loop. I'm going to go ahead and deselect this edge and deselect this edge and bridge. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and select these vertices, delete them. Let's see. Let's bridge these. So, select the border, cap, and cap this one. And you can see I'm going to have to give it. It has given this, because I've used the cap tool, it has given this new edge, this new polygon, a new smoothing group. I'm going to have to set it to 2. And this side as well. So once again, a quick result, simple topology, simple geometry, but a nice result when it's been smoothed. I'm going to go ahead and select this, delete it. Select these edges, deselect these edges. Bridge. Okay, it's giving me this nice sharp result, but I want to go ahead and first of all add a new edit poly modifier, and I want this to be a smooth result. You can see whenever you apply a bridge operation, when you switch to polygons, it will select those new polygons. So I can give it a smoothing group of 4, for example, or maybe 6. And now it gives me that a similar result, but now it will be smooth, and it will be smooth right here. A little bit of curve to give it some, so it's not just a boring rectangular shape, it's got a little bit of curvature to it. That looks much better, I think, than a square shape. So this is a great chance for you to play around with different shapes and figure out what looks good. Alright, and I can add, select these polygons, delete them, select these edges here, make sure you select the correct edges, bridge, okay, and do the same for this. Gives me that result. And let's see what other things we can do. I can go ahead and add one more here, ring here. I'm going to select these. So for this situation, I can select either the polygons and delete them, or I can select the edges in the middle and delete them. And I'm going to select these edges. Bridge. And then switch to the border tool and cap this and cap this. And it gives me, automatically creates those smoothing groups and gives me a nice result. I'm going to make sure my edge constraints is on. Move this down here. Move this up. Gives me that nice hard surface detail there. Let's see. I want a detail here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on ignore back facing and switch to my spray select tool and just kind of spray it right here. So in this video I'm really opening up 3ds Max and really giving you, combining a lot of different options together, from the ignore back facing to the smoothing groups, to the constraints. Now we're getting a little bit more complex, but as you can see, what I'm doing here is still relatively simple. The end result might be very complex and cool looking, but the actual process is, I like to say it's very kind of methodical, and we're not doing anything too crazy here. Just bevel this out. So as you can see, the smoothing groups, I'll have to work with them here. I'm going to select this edge loop, constrain to edge, and just kind of move this up here. You can see if I simply use the z-axis, it's giving me something strange over here. But if I go here in the middle and select both z and x, it will move up much nicer. Maybe I want to move this up here, and then deselect this and move this up. Okay, now let's fix the smoothing groups. I want this to be 1. Okay, what's happening here in the middle? I'm going to go ahead and activate the angle tool. Let's try 7. Okay, there we go. We fixed that up. I'm going to go ahead and change this real quick. Yep. So there we go. So as you can see, we're getting more and more detailed. Well, as you can see, it's a very easy process. There's nothing very difficult about this. I'm going to add 2 edges here. I'm going to go ahead and select these. Deactivate this. Activate my transparency by pressing Alt X. I'm going to bevel. So it remembers my last bevel settings. I'm going to right click. I'm going to bevel negatively, about right here. Okay. Delete these edges. select these vertices, weld, maybe increase the weld threshold to 1 for example. Select these edges, constrain to edge. Okay, so right now because of the smoothing groups it's giving me this result. I want this part to be smooth, so I'm going to select these 2, 3, 4, 10. There you go. So now I can maybe add another object here. Maybe add a box. Give it my material and a black object color. And do a few simple edits on it. I'm doing this very quickly right now, but normally I would spend more time to make this more detailed. And for this one, maybe I won't bother with smoothing groups. Maybe for this one, I'll just do the simple edge, control edges, support loops, and control loops. And then I can hold Shift, make an instance, move it here. And so to connect with the previous video on instancing, I can move it right here and then make it edit this object while looking at this object to make it fit in there. And this is an example of how you can work with instances and how you can use objects, put them next to other objects or into other objects to add more detail. So, if this chest pad was being held together by belts or some kind of sci-fi buckle, some kind of sci-fi connecting object, then this is how you would go about that. So first I made this little indentation to give it space, to add room to it, and then I create an object here, made an instance of it, put it here, and then I can make this one whatever I want, and it will happen to this other object that's already in place. So we're getting a lot more complex now. We're really opening up 3ds Max and seeing what kind of results we can get. I mean, this object I'm not really satisfied with it, but I'll leave it like this for now. Or I can, for example, clone this one as a copy and then make an instance and put this one in a different position. I can put this one here, for example. Make sure the rotation is just right, and then I can edit this object, make it activate my symmetry. Always want to do that if your object is symmetrical. And so I can even move this one closer. I move it right here. It's still in a planar position. It's still good for working in a planar fashion. And so I can increase the length to have it match this other object, to make it fit nice and snug in there. And maybe change the subject up somehow. So really, you just use your imagination to figure out what kinds of things you can do, how far you can take it, what shapes look good, what shapes don't look so good together. You can study composition. So there I've changed the shape around a little bit, and now it's starting to fit together. This armor is starting to look like something presentable. Just have to keep working on it. So in this case, I can use another tool. For example, I'm going to use the slice plane, move it into position, rotate it right here. Let's say I want to cut off this left side here. Rotate it around a little bit more. slice. Actually, I'm gonna activate the split option. I'm gonna slice, and now this is a separate element right here. So I can go ahead and either keep it or delete it. Because of this topology, we're gonna have to fix it up a little bit. So I'm gonna switch to border cap. Let's see. I'm in my vertex sub-object mode. I'm gonna go ahead and connect. And so really how much time you spend on fixing and topology really depends, really is up to you. Use your judgment to see what needs fixing and what you can get away with. I'm using the constraint to edge tool and kind of moving this out here, seeing what's going on here with the model. And although the topology here is not perfect, it's far from being perfect or good. Because we're using smoothing groups, we can get away with lots of stuff. And only worry about fixing that after we're satisfied with the overall design and shape. And then I can maybe add some holes here. Here, for example, I'm going to go ahead and inset, bevel. First I'm going to bevel a little bit here. Then I'm going to bevel a lot more. Alt X for transparency. I'm going to give this a smoothing group of, let's say, 12. And this a smoothing group of, say, 13. And now I'm going to go ahead and give this a smoothing group of 2. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe move these details off to the side or hide them because they're kind of blocking my view right now. So fix this up, move this to the right a little bit. And as you can see, it gives me a very nice looking hole here very quickly. So that's the power of smoothing groups. Very quickly adding detail and creating your shapes without worrying about topology too much. As you can see right here, this is an example of where I would fix up my topology. I want there to be a rectangular detail, but because of the topology, the top of this rectangle is skewed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on edge constraints to kind of move it down a little bit here. Also move this one down, although it's really not necessary. And that's closer. Bevel inwards negatively. And as you can see, this is all one smoothing group here, and it gives me this very nice result very quickly. And it's still a very simple object. You can see it's not like it's jam-packed with dense edges and details. It's a very simple object here. That's the beauty of this. You can keep your objects very simple. You don't have to clog your objects up with lots of edges, support loops, control loops. You can save that to the end and still get a very nice result here. You can see we're working quite quickly here and quite efficiently. And let's see what other kinds of things I'd like to add here. So maybe add, select this, add, select this, bevel it out a little bit until it matches this edge here. I'm going to select this polygon, delete them, activate my target weld tool and weld it right here. Alright, select these edges here, edge constraint, or maybe move these edges here. And these edges here. and this edge here. Alright, let's see what we can do about smoothing groups. What exactly we can do is select these smoothing groups and give them a new one. That looks okay. Maybe make this one smoothing group here. You can see we're getting this kind of strange thing happening here. That's because we have to just kind of tweak it until we get something better. Maybe like that. And I can quickly change this by selecting this and giving it a different smoothing group. So this is what it looks like now, and I'm getting a smoothing group of say 16, and that's going to give me a completely different looking detail. So you can quickly give your model different details very simply. Quick and simple, quick and easy. And then maybe inset, constraint to face, and just kind of fix this up a little bit, make it more square. It's not perfect, but it will do for now, for the purposes of demonstration. Extrude once, and then bevel once, and then bevel again. There you go. So that's an example of how you can quickly get some nice looking detail. And just keep working and working until you get something that looks good. And if you want to do a quick presentation, you can increase the iterations to 2 or 3, for example, and then add a turbo smooth on top of that without the smoothing groups option enabled. So that's one example of how you can quickly create geometry for baking into game resolution meshes. But in this example, it's very dense, and it can really slow down your scene. So that's why I don't recommend this method. This is just for a quick presentation. If you want to do a quick render of what your model looks like, you can do this method, but it's very dense. So let's say that I'm working with this and I'm satisfied with this. I like this shape. I want to go ahead and optimize this for final animation and whatnot. I'll just go ahead and add edit poly on top, delete the right side, and now I'll begin adding those edge loops and fixing up my topology. Thank you for watching, and take care.